the cows on the bank of the Nile. Then the ugly and thin cows are the seven, wait, eight, I can't read. Eight, my vision's blurry even with the large print. 8 to 7 fine-looking, I need glasses, fine-looking fat cows. Then Pharaoh awoke, but he slept and dreamed a second time. And behold, 7 ears of grain came up on a single stalk, plump and good. Then behold, 7 ears, thin and scorched by the east sun, sprouted up after them. And the thin ears swallowed the 7 plump and full ears. Then Pharaoh awoke, and behold, it was a dream. Now in the morning, his spirit was troubled, so he sent messengers and called for all the soothsayers and priests of Egypt and all its wise men. And Pharaoh told them his diviners, but there was no one who could interpret the dream for Pharaoh. Then the chief cupbearer spoke to Pharaoh, saying, I would make mention today of my own offenses. Pharaoh was furious with his servants, and he put me in confinement in the house of the captain of the bodyguard, both me and the chief baker. Then we had a dream one night. He and I, each of us, dreamed according to the interpretation of his own dream. Now, a Hebrew youth was there with us, a servant of the captain of the bodyguard, and we told him the dreams, and he interpreted our dreams for us. For each man he interpreted according to his own dream. And just as he interpreted for us, so it happened. Pharaoh restored me in my office, but he hanged the chief baker. Then Pharaoh sent word and called for Joseph, and they hurriedly brought him out of the dungeon. And when he had shaved himself and changed his clothes, he came to Pharaoh. Pharaoh said to Joseph, I have had a dream, but no one can interpret it. And I have heard it said about you that when you hear a dream, you can interpret it. Joseph then answered Pharaoh, saying, it has nothing to do with me. God will give Pharaoh an answer for his own good. So Pharaoh said to Joseph, in my dream there was standing on the bank of the Nile, and behold, 7 cows, fat and fine-looking, came up of the Nile. And they grazed in the marsh grass. Then behold, 7 other cows came up after them, poor and very ugly and thin, such as I had never seen for ugliness in all the land of Egypt. And the thin and ugly cows ate the first 7 fat cows. Yet when they had devoured them, it could not be detected that they had devoured them, for they were just as ugly as before. Then I awoke. I saw also in my dream, and behold, 7 ears of grain, full and good, came up on a single stalk, and behold, 7 ears, withered, thin, and scorched by the east sun, sprouted and up after them. And the thin ears swallowed the 7 good ears. Then I told to the soothsayer priests, but there was no one who could explain it to me. And Joseph said to Pharaoh, Pharaoh's dreams are one and the same. God has told Pharaoh what he is about to do. The 7 good cows are 7 years, and 7 good ears are 7 years. The dreams are one and the same. The 7 thin and ugly cows that came up after them, and the 7 are 7 years, and the 7 thin ears scorched by the eastern sun will be 7 years of famine. It is as I have spoken to Pharaoh. God has shown Pharaoh what he is about to do. Behold, 7 years of great abundance are coming in all the land of Egypt. And after them, 7 years of famine will come, and all the abundance will be forgotten in the land of Egypt, and famine will ravage the land. So the abundance will be unknown in the land because of that subsequent famine, for it will be very severe. Now, as for repeating of the dreams to Pharaoh twice, it means that the matter is confirmed by God, and God will quickly bring it about. So now let Pharaoh look for a man discerning and wise, and appoint him over the land of Egypt. Let Pharaoh take action to appoint overseers in charge of the land, and let him take 1/5 of the produce of the land of Egypt as a tax in the 7 years of abundance. Then have them collect all the food of these good years that are coming, and store up the grain for food in the cities under Pharaoh's authority, and have them guard it. Let the food be used as a reserve for the land for the 7 years of famine which will occur in the land of Egypt, so that the land will not perish during the famine. Now the proposal seemed good to Pharaoh and to all his servants. Then Pharaoh said to the servants, can we find a man like this in whom there is a divine spirit? So Pharaoh said to Joseph, since God has informed you of all this, there is no one as discerning and wise as you. You shall be in charge of my house, and all my people shall be obedient to you. Only regarding the throne will I be greater than you. Pharaoh also said to Joseph, see, I have placed over you the land of Egypt. Then Pharaoh took off his signet ring from his hand and put it on Joseph's hand, and clothed him in garments of fine linen. And he put the gold necklace around his neck. And he had him ride in the second chariot, and they proclaimed ahead of him, bow the knee. And he placed him over the land of Egypt. Moreover, Pharaoh said to Joseph, though I am Pharaoh, yet without your permission, no one shall raise his hand or foot in all the land. Then Pharaoh named him Zaphnath-Paneah, and he gave him Asenath, the daughter of Potipharah, priest of On, to be his wife, and Joseph went out over the land of Egypt. May the Lord bless our reading. You may be seated. For the last 4 days, I've been in front of my computer, just constantly editing and writing to try to get my assignment turned in, and my eyes are not recovered. So normally this is large print, but it didn't work today, so I'm sorry for that. I've had some pretty interesting jobs. One of my favorite jobs that I ever had was I was the best batter fry cook at the Popeyes on Little York and 59 in Houston when I was 16. The managers and the cooks used to be able to, they'd race, you season chicken, the spicy chicken in a big sink, and you put it in there and you pour the packet. You have to wear these big rubber gloves because if it touches your skin, it burns. It's just like full of cayenne pepper, right? And that's how they do the spicy, by the way. So you put it in there and then you mix it, and then you put this metal insert, and then you start putting legs, thighs, breast, wings in that order. And that's how they fit. And you could fit 50 pieces of chicken in one metal insert. And they would race. And we had these tournaments, so who can season the chicken the fastest and put it in the tubs the fastest? Well, when I show up, I broke every record. Yeah. I did. My manager thought he could beat me, and he was the champion. And then he gets in there, and he loses 3 times in a row to yours truly. And then I realized he's manipulating me to season the chicken faster. Well, through bad choices, I couldn't work there anymore. And, I ended up becoming a journeyman electrician. Loved being an electrician. It was a wonderful job. It paid my way through Bible college and a portion of it through my seminary training, and then got hired at the jail. Something like that. Anyway, but it was good to me. And somehow, while I was an electrician, I got hired by the electricians union to work in their office as an organizer. They gave me a huge salary, a bunch of paid vacation. I had never benefits. It's like, wow, this is pretty neat, I don't even know why I'm here. Like, y'all picked the wrong person. It made a lot of the rank and file members upset because I was a newcomer into the union, and they were mad that they selected me to work in the office with everyone else, the business manager. And I signed up this young man who was going to become an electrician. He came in and he filled out the application, and I sent it through. He was very mild, very meek. He was just kind of cool. Right? And then he signed up, and he signed the out-of-work book, and work was good. About a week later, he was out on the job, and he was on the job, and I didn't see him for about 2 more years. Well, I leave that job, and I get hired by Midwest Electric, and 6 months in, I'm a foreman, and I'm running a crew, and I run into this guy, right? And he's completely changed, right? He's talking like another foreman that I used to work with. I won't say his name, but he's a friend of mine. And this guy was from East Texas with a Texas drawl, and he used to call everyone Hand. Hey, did you pick that thing up over there, Hand? Say, Hand, come here, let me talk to you for a second. And he was a foreman, and he called everyone Hand. And I heard this guy saying like, hey, Hand, come here, Hand, talking like that. And this guy would say, and I mess with Sarah because I tell her this sometimes, I say, like it, live it, love it. I got that from this foreman, right? I tell you that. Like it, live it, love it. So I heard this guy around the corner doing it, and I go look, and it's the guy that I signed up who was mild-mannered, meek, and just kind of laid back. And I was like, why are you talking like this dude? Well, it turned out they had been working together for 2 years, right? And he was no longer the way he used to be. He assimilated into the mannerisms of this other guy, right? He assimilated. It's not bad. You're most like your closest 5 friends, they say. There's a YouTube video that went viral talking about that, so I don't know if that's true. Right? So you take on mannerisms, you kind of, you assimilate. That's okay. Another kind of assimilation. An assimilation towards ungodliness. Another guy is a professor of mine, found himself a porn addict. And he started getting weirder and weirder ideas. And he started befriending people in a different world than the one he was part of. And he kept it a secret. He destroyed his family, 2 of his children out of 4 don't talk to him to this day. He assimilated into ideas that are so ungodly, it's remarkable that he's still alive. He was a college professor at a Bible college, teaching Bible and theology. So there's a different kind of assimilation. See? So what we're going to look at is we're going to look at the story of Joseph, and we're going to watch as Moses, who gave us ambiguity about his worldview and how he views God, is going to clarify that. And at the same time of clarifying that, we're going to watch Joseph assimilate into a world that he had never been part of before. So what's our outline? Our outline is mad cows and rank wheat. The culprit and the cup revisited. You might have a typo in your bulletin because I sent the email out with a typo in it, so sorry. New digs and disambiguation, 14 through 32, and a new gig and assimilation, verses 33 through 45. Now I'm going to move quickly because guess who's in the audience today? And she gives me her eyes when I go long. So let's take our first point. Amen. Yes. I'll get y'all to lunch, I promise. All right, mad cows and rank wheat, verses 1 through 8. The first thing I want to talk about is the sense of time. Notice what happens here. We have a time jump. Now, it happened at the end of 2 full years that Pharaoh had a dream, and behold, he was standing by the Nile. At the end of 2 full years from what? From when he reestablished the baker or the cupbearer, but he lifted up the head, metaphorically, of the pastry chef, right? So 2 years happened from that. But something interesting happens. At the end of, we're going to stop at 45, but in 46, if you read verse 46, it says, now Joseph was 30 years old when he stood before Pharaoh. Wait, what? He was just 17 when his brothers sold him to the Ishmaelites that took him to Egypt. So between Potiphar's house and the prison, we don't know how much time was split between those two. What we do know is that from the time that the cupbearer and the baker had their dream till Pharaoh has his dream, 2 full years have passed. So some people argue, well, he was in prison 2 years. No, you can't know. But he's 30 years old. 12 years have passed from when he was sold till we get to verse 46. So we don't know how much time he was in prison, and we don't know how much time he was in Potiphar's house. What we do know is that he was in both. But for sure we know at least 2 years in prison because Pharaoh had a dream 2 years from those events when he restored the cupbearer. That gives us a sense of time. It's a time jump. For sure 2 years, but we're going to learn it's probably more than that. What about these mad cows, verses 2 through 4? And lo, from the Nile there came up 7 cows, sleek and fat, and they grazed in the marsh grass. No one ever. During Valentine's Day, these memes come out on Facebook, and they're Solomon's words from the Song of Solomon, right? You know what I'm talking about, right? They're pickup lines for Christians. If I march around you 7 times, will you fall for me? Right? Your neck is like a tower of David. Your teeth are like a fortified wall, no bricks are missing. So whatever you do, do not take this Bible passage and use it as a compliment for your wife. Now, there came up 7 cows, sleek and fat. Don't do that. Okay, that's not healthy if you want your marriage to make it. All right, for the newlyweds in the house, amen? All right, so verse 3, then behold, 7 other cows came up after them from the Nile, ugly and gaunt, and they stood by the other cows on the bank of the Nile. The ugly and gaunt cows ate up the 7 sleek and fat cows. Then Pharaoh awoke. So this is his dream. Mad cows, right? How do skinny, grotesque cows eat these beautiful fat ones? How do these beautiful fat cows that ought to be able to overtake or not be eaten by these lesser, weaker cows, how does that happen? And then he goes to sleep again. He fell asleep and dreamed a second time. And behold, 7 ears of grain came up on a single stalk, plump and good. Oh, that's great. Then behold, 7 ears, thin and scorched by the east wind, sprouted up after them. The thin ears swallowed up the 7 plump and full ears. Then Pharaoh woke, and behold, it was a dream. So now he's clamoring for clarity. Now in the morning his spirit was troubled, so he sent and called for all the magicians of Egypt, all its wise men. And Pharaoh told them his dreams, but there was no one who could interpret them to Pharaoh. So mad cows and rank wheat. He has these 2 dreams. The first person that ever dreamed in the Joseph story was Joseph, and he had 2 dreams. And then the next person was 2 men, 1 dream each. And now you have Pharaoh, who is 1 man with 2 dreams, and both dreams mean the same thing. So there's like this symmetry in how this is written. And now he's same situation. I have these dreams. I don't know what they mean. I'm clamoring for an answer. I need clarity. I need to know what it means. These are the kind of dreams that you realize, well, something's off. Something's not, this isn't my normal mode of being, right? So then we get to revisit the culprit in the cup. Remember, he forgot Joseph, and Joseph just was left in the lurch, languishing in the jail for the last 2 years at minimum. And the cupbearer's been restored to his office. 2 years go by. He's living, he went from almost being put to death to now he's got his job back and he gets to be in the palace and he gets to do all these things. He's back in his role. Forgets Joseph. So is he a culprit or is he saving face, verses 9 through 10? Notice verse 9. Then the chief cupbearer spoke to Pharaoh, saying, I would make mention today of my own offenses. Again, if I recall correctly from my study, it was the Hebrew word chata, which means sin. So they soften it here with offenses, it's more sin. I'll make mention today of my own sins. And you're like, wait a minute, he didn't get put to death. The pastry chef did. Was this guy guilty too? Was he in on that potential coup or maybe an assassination plot? We don't know. But whatever they did or whatever the pastry chef did, he lost his head. But this guy was restored to his office. Why would he tell Pharaoh right now, hey, let me tell you about my sins? You remember Pharaoh was furious with his servants and he put me in confinement in the house of the captain of the bodyguard, both me and the chief baker? So is he telling on himself? Is he confessing that, I was in on that too, you should have took my head off too? No, this is saving face. You were not allowed in the ancient Near East to tell the king he did something wrong or made a mistake. You're not allowed to do that. So he can't say, hey, remember when you thought I had tried to hurt you, but I didn't, it was the other guy, and during that time, he can't say that. You're not allowed to say that. You can't disgrace the king in front of everyone. It's a principle, right, that you correct in private and you celebrate in public. Right? If you're in management, that's a good principle. It's a biblical principle. Go to someone in private, right? So in ancient Near East, they didn't play that. You couldn't do that. You couldn't go and tell him he was wrong for throwing me in jail even though I was innocent. He can't say that. So he says, I'll make mention today of my own offenses. Pharaoh was furious. Now he brings up that time. So now Pharaoh understands where he's going with this. And what happens? The dreams are revisited. He tells his dreams, verses 11 through 13. We had a dream on the same night, he and I, him and the pastry chef, and we know how that ended up. Now, a Hebrew youth was with us there, a servant of the captain of the bodyguard, and we related them to him, and he interpreted our dreams for us. To each one he interpreted according to his own dream, and just as he interpreted for us, so it happened. He restored me in my office, but and when he says he's talking about Pharaoh. He's talking to Pharaoh in the third person, but he hanged him. You can't tell him. You have to create a degree of separation in the way you dealt with those who were in a high authority over you, like monarchs in the ancient Near East. But he hanged him. He didn't say, you hanged him. Because you've got to create that degree of separation. The story started with, you made a mistake, but I can't tell you that because I'm alive, I'm right here. And I'm really trying to help you. But he has to word it. This is what would be the polity of the day. So he reminds Pharaoh what had just happened. 2 years ago, this is what happened. And there was this Hebrew youth in there. That's that legendary lad, Joseph. And it brings me to my third point. See, this is going fast. New digs and disambiguation, verses 14 through 32. And we'll spend most of the time here, but not too much. A change of clothes foreshadows a change of status. Remember that? Verse 14. Then Pharaoh sent and called for Joseph, and they hurriedly brought him out of the dungeon. And when he had shaved his head and changed his clothes. Now, what happened the last time Joseph changed his clothes? They stripped him. He was sold to the Ishmaelites that brought him down to Egypt. And then while he was in Potiphar's house thriving, and Potiphar's house was blessed on account of Joseph, Mrs. Potiphar tries to seduce him, and he runs from her, and she keeps his garment. He changes clothes again. He's without his garment. What happens to him? He changes his status. He goes to the prison. So 2 times he changes clothes, he goes lower. 1, he's a slave, and then next he's in the dungeon or in the prison. And now he's going to change his clothes, but he's going to be elevated. So he's gone down, now he's going to go up. Okay? The tension is relieved. What tension am I talking about? Verse 15, Pharaoh said to Joseph, I have had a dream, but no one can interpret it, and I have heard it said about you that when you hear a dream, you can interpret it. Verse 16, Joseph then answered Pharaoh, saying, it is not in me. God will give Pharaoh a favorable answer. Now, in the Septuagint, that's the Greek translation of the Old Testament, of the Hebrew Old Testament scriptures. In the Septuagint, they translate it this way. Without God, an answer of shalom will not be given to Pharaoh. So in other words, hey, if God's not in this, you're not going to get a good answer. Now remember, Pharaoh knows the situation because he hanged one of the guys and he's restored one of the guys. So these dreams could go either way for Pharaoh. And Joseph is telling him, hey, unless God is in it, and the Septuagint translators try to pick up on that idea. But that's not where I want to emphasize. What I want to emphasize is this. Joseph's use of the word God here has changed from his two uses earlier. His two uses earlier occurred in nominal sentences without a verb. And they had a preposition on them. Do not interpretations belong to God? And there's no definite article. And there's no way for you to know, because there's no verb there for you to know if he means a third masculine singular, the God, or the generic term, the gods. Moses wrote it that way on purpose. But here, Moses has added the article with a third masculine singular verb. And now it's unambiguous. Joseph is referring to monotheistic God, the one true God. So Moses is relieving tension for us by having this in Joseph's words. He answered Pharaoh saying, it is not me or apart from me. God is the one who will give Pharaoh a favorable answer or an answer of shalom. So there's no ambiguity. But let's go a little bit further with a little bit more disambiguation. Now we have evidence of the source of the dreams. Remember, who couldn't interpret these for Pharaoh? If we go back up to verse 8, right? Now in the morning his spirit was troubled, so he sent messengers and called for all the soothsayers, priests of Egypt and all its wise men, and Pharaoh told them his dreams, but there was no one who could interpret them for Pharaoh. None of their divination, none of their spirits, none of their demonism could tell them anything. That means there's a veil that's blocking them. So now we get a detail. Moses is relieving ambiguation. He's saying this dream is from God. Well, why is God giving a dream to a foreign ruler who is really not friendly and from the line of Ham that tried to take Sarai from Abraham? Well, I'll present why I think that here in a minute. So there's disambiguation. We're seeing things clear. Joseph is talking about the one true God, and now we're getting a glimpse that God is the one that's actually the source of these dreams. So now Pharaoh starts recounting his dream in verses 17 through 24. He says this, so Pharaoh spoke to Joseph, in my dream, behold, I was standing on the bank of the Nile, and behold, 7 cows, fat and sleek, came up out of the Nile, and they grazed the marsh grass. Lo, 7 other cows came up after them, and you get the story, what happened. They came up and they ate them. So now let's get to the interpretation. So he's going to recount in verse 24 the 7 ears of wheat. Now, he gives some commentary here. He says, I've never seen ugliness like this in Egypt before. And then he talks about the wheat, and he adds some commentary, but the dreams are essentially exactly the same. So now we see some sweet and sour wheat. Amen? And this is the interpretation. Now Joseph said to Pharaoh, Pharaoh's dreams are one and the same. God has told, and then there's that word God here in verse 25, with a third masculine singular verb. The one true God has told Pharaoh what he is about to do, what God is about to do. The 7 good cows are 7 years, and the 7 good ears are 7 years. The dreams are one and the same. The 7 lean and ugly cows that came up after them are 7 years, and the 7 thin ears scorched by the east wind will be 7 years of famine. It is as I have spoken to Pharaoh. God, there it is again, the one true God with the definite article. God has shown to Pharaoh what he is about to do. Behold, 7 years of great abundance are coming in all the land of Egypt, and after them 7 years of famine will come, and all the abundance will be forgotten in the land of Egypt, and the famine will ravage the land. So the abundance will be unknown in the land because of that subsequent famine, for it will be very severe. Now, as for the repeating of the dream to Pharaoh twice, it means that the matter is determined by God, and God will quickly bring it about. Now, the famine is going to be so bad. We're going to have so much for 7 years. But the 7 years after that are going to be so bad that no one's going to even remember the abundance of the 7 years. That's how bad it's going to be. Severe, right? And what's interesting here is God's involved. There's no ambiguity anymore. Third masculine singular verbs. The definite article hearkening back to his first mention of God with a third masculine singular verb just a few verses ago. Joseph is talking about the one true God, the powerful God, the creator God, the God that cares about human affairs, the God that cares about you. I read a story. I don't know if it's a true story, but indulge me. I'm going to read it to you. It's about Abraham Lincoln, oh, honest Abe. Right? It goes like this, quote, "On the front porch of his little country store in Illinois, Abraham Lincoln and Barry, his business partner, stood. Business was all gone, and Barry asked, 'How much longer can we keep this going?' Lincoln answered, 'It looks as if our business has just about winked out.' Then he continued, 'I wouldn't mind so much if I could just do what I want to do. I want to study law,' Abraham Lincoln said. 'I wouldn't mind so much if we could sell everything we've got and pay all our bills and just have enough left over to buy one book, Blackstone's Commentary on English Law. But I guess I can't.' A strange-looking wagon was coming up the road. The driver angled it up close to the store porch, then looked at Lincoln and said, 'I'm trying to move my family out west, and I'm out of money. I got a good barrel here that I could sell for 50 cents. Abraham Lincoln's eyes went along the wagon and came to the wife, looking at him pleadingly, the way Sarah looks at me when I go over. Face thin and emaciated, Lincoln ran his hand into his pocket and took out, according to him, the last 50 cents I had, and said, 'I reckon I could use a good barrel.' All day long, the barrel sat on the porch of that store. Barry kept chiding Lincoln about it. Late in the evening, Lincoln walked out and looked down into the barrel. He saw something in the bottom of it, papers that he hadn't noticed before. His long arms went down into the barrel, and as he fumbled around, he hit something solid. He pulled out a book and stood petrified. It was Blackstone's Commentary on English Law. Of that event, Lincoln later wrote, quote, 'I stood there holding the book and looking up toward the heavens. There came a deep impression on me that God had something for me to do, and he was showing that I had to get ready for it. Why this miracle otherwise?' He ends his quote. Why this miracle otherwise? This text and Lincoln's story tells us that God is operative in human affairs, dearly beloved. Sometimes we go through life just business as usual, and we forget just how amazing God has in his providence organized things in this world. Martin Luther once wrote, 'God's wonderful works which happen daily are lightly esteemed, not because they are of no import, but because they happen so constantly and without interruption. Man is used to the miracle that God rules the world and upholds all creation, and because things daily run their appointed course, it seems insignificant. And no man thinks it's worth his while to meditate upon it and to regard it as God's wonderful work. And yet, all of that is a greater wonder than Christ feeding 5,000 men and women and children. How he just upholds everything and is involved in human affairs, in your lives. So here's this Egyptian demonized with their false religion, descendants of Ham and wickedness. And God gives him a dream to let him know what's coming. God cares and interacts in human affairs, and he interacts in our lives as well. So this is sweet and sour wheat. It's sweet in that God cares and warned them and told them to prepare. It's sour in that it's going to be some hard 14 years, good 7 years, and then hard 14 that they're going to forget the good 7 years. And it brings me to my fourth point, new gig and assimilation, verses 33 through 45. Ancient Near East job application. Do you want to know how to put a job application in Egypt? If you were alive at this time, this is how you do it, okay? Verse 33, now let Pharaoh look for a man. Remember, he can't say, I can do it for you. We're Westerners. We talk like that. We speak like that. We're like, you gotta be assertive. You gotta put yourself out there. Oh no, you can't do that in the ancient Near East. So this is him putting his job application in. Now let Pharaoh look for a man, discerning and wise. Now he can't say that about himself. But make no mistake about it, Joseph is talking about himself. and set him over the land of Egypt. Now, we don't know if he gets his job yet. We're going to see, well, you know, because you read the story. But taxation or tyranny, verses 34 through 37. Look at Joseph's idea. This originates with Joseph. He interpreted the dream. He told Pharaoh the dream. But what comes next, this is Joseph talking. Let Pharaoh take action to appoint overseers in charge of the land, and let him exact a fifth of the produce of the land of Egypt in the 7 years of abundance. Then let them gather all the food of these good years that are coming, and store up the grain for food in the cities under Pharaoh's authority, and let them guard it. Let the food become as a reserve for the land for 7 years of famine, which will occur in the land of Egypt, so that the land will not perish during the famine. Now, the proposal seemed good to Pharaoh and all his servants. Now, here's the thing, okay? What's going on here? Sounds good. That's a great idea. We need to store up some grain. In the plentiful years, it's going to be so abundant that a fifth will be more than enough for the years that are severe. So far, so good. Now, what is the application of this policy? Is it taxation to save your countrymen, or is it going to become tyranny? Now, I want you to turn over to verses 55 through 56. Watch what happens. And we'll cover this again when we get there, but I just want to show you just like a snippet, verse 55 through 56. Same chapter. So when all the land of Egypt suffered famine, the people, what people? Egyptians. The people cried out to Pharaoh for bread. And Pharaoh said to all the Egyptians, go to Joseph. Whatever he says to you, you shall do. Right? Yes? Who's in charge? Verse 56. When the famine was spread over the entire face of the earth, then Joseph opened all the storehouses and sowed grain to the Egyptians. It's their grain. This is tyranny. This is a problem. Joseph's a problem for me. There's so many characteristics where he's a type of Christ, and then there's this thing where you could not live under his economic policy. He's an enigma. That's why when I introduced the Joseph story, I wanted to warn you. There's tension here. Now, Moses is clarifying he believes in God, and then he's doing this. There's that tension again. I don't know how to take him. And we want it neat, but it can never be. Because he's flawed like all of us. We do great things. We show up when we need it. We do all these things, and then there's times where we just blow it. And I think Joseph is blowing it here. And I think he's blowing it because by the time you get to verses 55 and 56, he's assimilated. He's been in a powerful position. He's hot stuff. He sold it back to them. It was their grain. Does he get the gig? Verses 38 through 40. Then Pharaoh said, remember he put his job application in, let Pharaoh discern, hot stuff. Then Pharaoh said to his servants, can we find a man like this in whom is a divine spirit? So Pharaoh said to Joseph, since God, now here's the thing. Pharaoh's not using God the same way Joseph did. It doesn't have the definite article that harkens back to the previous uses. It's a separate use. So here, quite literally, he's probably saying, since the gods, because I don't worship the God you worship, Joseph, the gods informed you of all of this. There is no one so discerning and wise as you. You shall be over my house, and according to your command, all my people shall do homage. Only in the throne I will be greater than you. He gets the job. Isn't that neat? What else happens? There's going to be a link here, an intertextual link to Judah's story. And I call this assimilation, walk like an Egyptian, verses 41 through 45. There's another song reference for you, song heads. Verse 41, Pharaoh said to Joseph, see, I have set you over all the land of Egypt. Then Pharaoh took off his signet ring. Where did we last hear that? Remember when Judah went with Tamar? He took off his signet ring and his cords and his staff. And so this is a clue. And what is this clue telling you? This is ominous. This is not good. It's a problem. and clothed him in garments of fine linen and put the gold necklace around his neck. He has authority now. Now remember, every time Joseph changes his clothes, he changes his status. Now he is top dog, only second to the throne of Egypt, only second to Pharaoh. He's the main guy, right? This is really impressive to go from all the way down to as low as of low. Now he's elevated. Verse 43, he had him ride. Pharaoh had Joseph ride in his second chariot. You're my co-pilot. You're my right-hand man. And they proclaimed before him, bow the knee. So he receives worship. Bow the knee. Pay homage to him. You bow down. Now, none of this, when this is happening, the years of produce, haven't really just started, and the famine hasn't started. They're putting faith in this guy because Pharaoh knows he had the dreams. No one else knows. Like I got to give a tax behind a dream that the king had. And then this guy, this Hebrew kid from, yonder came over here and interpreted, and this is what we have to do now. And he's telling everybody, bow the knee to this guy in Egypt. Joseph's hot stuff. Changes his clothes. Now he's the number 2 guy in all of Egypt. Able to receive worship? There's nothing in the text that tells us that he refuses it. And to be fair, it just says that Pharaoh said this to the people, bow the knee every time Joseph passed by. But I think he's assimilating. Moreover, Pharaoh said to Joseph, though I am Pharaoh, yet without your permission, no one shall raise his hand or foot in all the land of Egypt. Verse 45, and then here we go, more assimilation. Then Pharaoh named Joseph Zaphenath Paneah. You know what that means? It means revealer of secrets is one of the most common translators. Your name shall be revealer of secrets. Right, he interpreted his dream. And gave him Asenath, the daughter of Potipharah, priest of On. Now, Asenath, that name, the most common understanding of that name, it's an Egyptian name. It says belonging to or devoted to Neith, which is an Egyptian goddess considered to be the creator of the universe. But another way that name could be rendered is gift of the sun god. He's a gift of the sun god. And her father's name is Potipharah, and his name means he whom Ra has given. Right? So these are Egyptian gods. Their names are associated with Egyptian gods, and he's marrying the daughter of the priest who worships the Egyptian gods. He started, notice how this book ends. Joseph started with a dream with the sun, the moon, the stars, and it ends with him marrying a woman who's named after the sun. Right? So he's assimilating. Make no mistake about it, just like that one electrician could start saying, hand, 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 and it's nothing negative or bad, but it influenced him. How much do you think power and wealth and being the number 2 guy can influence you? This is not easy. I doubt any one of us could do any better than he did. Having that kind of power. Your brothers do you wrong. Say you into slavery. You're just listening to dad. You're dad's favorite. You go through prison, false imprisonment because of Mrs. Potiphar. The cupbearer that you helped forgets you. And now you're elevated to the top spot so fast. That's hard to bear. So of course he assimilates. Starts becoming more Egyptian-like. Starts walking like an Egyptian. Well, so what? We looked at mad cows and rank wheat, the culprit and the cup revisited, new digs and disambiguation, and a new gig in assimilation. Well, so what? How can we apply this today? First thing I think when I read this text is I'm just amazed at the theological truth. That God concerns himself with human affairs for the good of his people. God concerns himself with human affairs for the good of his people. That's a true statement. That's true theology. He cares for you. All the hard things you've been through, all the things that happened in your life that if you look back and you care to look, you would see that God's hand was all over you and You believe in Jesus Christ. You had access to the gospel. He cares for you. He wants you to be like his son. Predestined us to conform to the image of the Son. How? By being part of this group that, by faith, can enter into a relationship with him. He cares for us. But the second thing is that being elevated, that can be okay. Getting promoted, that can be okay. But assimilating into ungodliness is never okay. Assimilating into ungodliness is never okay. When I got that job as a union organizer, one of the first trips I got to go on, they pay for everything. So I got to go to Brownsville, a border town at the tip of Texas and Mexico, because we had a fledgling local union there that was struggling, and we wanted to go see if we can help them get more organized and figure out how to get more market share of the work. And so we go down there. I'm maybe 3 or 4 years in of church attendance and making church a part of my life. I was committed to church. I just got out of the gang, and I knew that I needed to be in church, and I couldn't be anywhere else. I had to be in church. So every Sunday I was in church. Every Wednesday I was in church, and I was worshiping, and I was reading, and I was trying to do, I just knew that I needed something more than what I had. And I have this great job, and it pays me a great salary, a salary I've never had before. Remember, I worked at Popeyes before that. And we get down there, and the business manager that we went to this trip with, he's inviting the other business manager, and we're going to go have a meeting and eat a steak at a strip club. Do you assimilate? Do you, well, this is business, far from home. No one's going to know. I was afraid that if I said, no, I can't do that, I'm not going in there, just leave me at the hotel room, that I would lose my job. This is a group of alpha males everywhere, A-type personalities, and they're very, in that world, they're very just like bulldogs. I feigned a phone call in the car, and they all went in. I said, I'll catch up with you guys. And I feigned a phone call in the car, and I stayed there pretending I had the phone, and I prayed, God, I need your help. Get me out of this situation. I don't want to destroy my testimony. Help me. The business manager comes out, and he says, back then they called me Eduardo. Ed's easier. Eduardo, I don't know what in the world I was thinking. I'm so sorry. You're a Christian. Let's go eat somewhere else. God cares and concerns himself with human affairs. He helped me that day because I needed it at that moment. In my walk, at that level that I was on as an immature Christian, I needed it. I'm so grateful. That guy is serving the Lord now, faithful in his church. There's another guy. I won't say his name. He's a congressman in Texas. Navy SEAL, campaigned on integrity. That guy assimilated. And his net worth over just being a congressman over the last 4 years. Just a kid from New Caney, Texas. Is over $30 million. When people talk about him, they have all this common theme. That guy will sell you out in a heartbeat. You know why? He went to Washington and assimilated into corruption. So we can assimilate into righteousness, or we can assimilate into the things that destroy us, into tyranny. Choice is yours. But no matter what choice you make, it will never take away from number one, that God is concerned with the affairs of your life for the good of his people. Make sure you're a net good. for those in your sphere of influence. Father, we love you. We thank you for this opportunity to study your word and to see how Joseph descended into the lowest point of his life and now ascended and has been elevated, but we also see marks of assimilation in a bad way. I think Joseph is going to end up creating an economic policy that's going to be harmful. But you still used it to preserve life. We're going to soon read Jacob and his family and the famine are going to go to Egypt, and you're going to sustain them through the bread from Egypt because you care about your people. Lord, if there's anyone in here today that has allowed cynicism into their heart to think that you don't care, that you've never cared, that life is just life, Lord, may they feel your presence today. May they be convicted in their heart that that is bad theology. We all breathe and have our being because of you, Lord, because you care for us. May we leave with that truth embedded deep in our hearts this morning. In Christ's name we pray, and by the power of the Holy Spirit, and all of God's children said, amen.